The storm had been building since before dawn. By the time the first flights were supposed to leave Charlotte Douglas International Airport, the sky outside was the color of old pewter, thick and low and pressing down over the runways like something with weight to it. Rain came in sideways. Wind pushed against the terminal glass in long, shuddering gusts that made the whole building feel less permanent than it usually did. Inside, the departure boards told the story in two words repeated down the length of every screen in every corridor. Delayed, delayed, delayed. The terminal had that particular kind of energy that settles in when a large group of people surrender to the same thing at the same time. Not panic, not anger, something quieter and heavier than either of those. The resignation of people who have accepted that the next several hours belong to something they cannot control and who are now simply trying to endure them with whatever dignity they have left. Families had claimed floor space between the rows of seats. Suitcases formed low walls around them. Children lay stretched across gate chairs with their arms folded under their heads, already checked out from the adult world of frustration happening around them. A businessman near a charging station paced a slow, tight circle, his phone pressed hard against his ear, his voice low and controlled, in the way that meant he was working very hard not to let it become something else. The coffee stand near gate C11 had a line that bent around the corner and did not seem to be moving. A handwritten sign taped to the front of the pastry case read, "No more blueberry muffins. Sorry." The woman behind the counter kept her head down and her hands moving and did not make eye contact with anyone. Gate C14 sat at the far end of the corridor, tucked past the point where the foot traffic thinned. The gate screen showed the same delayed status as everything else. A few travelers sat in the rows of chairs, most of them staring at phones or at the middle distance with the blank focus of people waiting for something that is taking too long. A cleaning cart had been left near the far wall, its yellow caution sign still up, even though no one was working anywhere nearby. And there, pressed against one of the wide square pillars near the gate entrance, was a little girl. She looked no older than 8. Small for her age, maybe, or just made smaller by the way she was holding herself. Her hair had been put up at some point, but most of it had come loose and hung around her face in tangled pieces. Her jacket was light blue, the kind with a hood shaped like an animal ear, a small brown rabbit on the left side. One of the jacket's cuffs was dirty, smudged with something dark, like she had been sitting somewhere less clean than this for a while before she ended up here. Her backpack leaned against the pillar beside her. One strap had torn loose at the seam and hung down limp and useless against the side of the bag. Her right knee showed through a small rip in her leggings. The skin there was scraped raw, a thin line of dried blood that had run toward her shin and dried dark. It was not a deep cut, but it had not been cleaned. No one had cleaned it. Her cheeks were wet. She was not crying loudly. There was no wailing, no calling out for anyone. Just the quiet kind of crying that happens when a child has already cried the loud part out, and all that is left is the sadness leaking through on its own, slow and steady, like water through old stone. Her eyes moved every time someone walked past. A man in a business suit walked by without slowing. A woman dragging a rolling carry-on glanced down at her and looked away. 2 teenagers passed shoulder to shoulder, laughing about something on one of their phones, not looking at the floor at all. A gate agent walked by with a clipboard scanning names and numbers, not small faces pressed against pillars. Nobody stopped. The little girl pulled her knees tighter to her chest and made herself smaller against the pillar. Her chin dropped. Her shoulders curved inward. She wiped her face with the back of her hand once and then stopped trying. She watched feet after that. Just feet. An endless shuffle of strangers going somewhere that was not here. Sneakers, dress shoes, boots, sandals. She had stopped looking for a familiar face a while ago. Now she just held the working strap of her backpack with both hands and watched the floor and held on. Cole Briggs had been sitting at the far end of the gate row for 23 minutes. He had chosen that seat for the same reason he always chose seats at the far end of things. It put his back to the wall and kept the open space in front of him. Old habit, the kind that lives in the body long after the reason for it has passed. He was a big man, wide across the shoulders in a way that had nothing to do with effort and everything to do with the frame he had been built on. His beard was full and dark, threaded through with gray that had been coming in steadily for the last several years, and he had stopped fighting it somewhere around his 45th birthday. His forearms rested on his knees, and the tattoos that covered them from wrist to elbow caught the overhead light in dull flashes when he shifted his weight. Eagles. A compass rose, a name in block letters on the inside of his left forearm, partially hidden by the sleeve of his gray shirt. The leather vest he wore over the shirt was covered in patches. Stitched letters pins a large insignia across the back that read, Iron Road MC, in a half arc above a stylized wheel. The vest was old. The leather had softened and shaped itself to him over the years until it fit the way a second skin fits, without effort, without thought. He was not looking at his phone. He was not looking at the departure board. He had his wallet open on his knee, and he was looking at the thing inside it. It was a piece of paper folded into quarters. The paper was old enough that the fold lines had gone soft and the corners had rounded with handling. He unfolded it the way he always unfolded it, carefully, as if the paper itself were something that could still be damaged even after all this time. The handwriting inside was a child's. Large, uneven letters that pressed hard into the page the way young kids write when they are still learning that a pen does not need to be fought. The words were simple, a child's words. Dad, come home. I miss you. Come home soon. Owen. There was a postmark on the envelope he kept folded behind it. March 14th, 2011. Cole had been in a forward operating base outside Kandahar when the letter was written. He had been in the same base, or one very much like it, when Owen was moved from his third foster placement to the group home in Asheville. He had been on a convoy route 4 days out of radio contact when Owen stopped eating. He had been 3,000 miles away and completely unreachable when Owen, 9 years old and 61 pounds, lay down on a cot in a room with 8 other boys and did not wake up the next morning. The letter had arrived at his unit 3 weeks after that. Cole folded it back along the old lines, put it in his wallet, closed the wallet and held it in his hand for a moment before he put it back in his pocket. He did not do this every time he opened his wallet, only sometimes, only when the weight of it needed acknowledging before he could put it back down. He looked up, looked. Across the gate area, past the rows of seated travelers and the abandoned cleaning cart, the little girl was still pressed against the pillar. He had noticed her when he sat down. He had not acted on it immediately. That was deliberate. He had learned a long time ago that moving too fast toward a frightened child accomplished nothing except making them more frightened. So he had watched. He had given it time. He had waited to see if someone was coming. A parent who had stepped away for a moment. A grandparent who had gone to find a restroom. Anyone. No one came. The people who walked past her kept walking past her. The gate agent with the clipboard did not slow. The 2 teenagers with the phone did not look down. Cole watched a woman with a rolling carry-on glance at the girl, make brief eye contact, and then look very deliberately away and accelerate her pace. He watched that happen, and he felt something in his chest that was not quite anger and not quite grief and had no good name for itself. He put his hands on his knees. He stood up. He was careful about how he crossed the space. He did not walk directly toward her. He moved at an angle, slowly letting himself stay visible in her peripheral vision for several seconds before he got close. He stopped about 6 feet away and crouched down, one hand dropping to the floor to steady himself, bringing himself low and slow, making himself smaller than he was. She saw him when he was still a few feet out. Her eyes came up fast. They went to his size first, then to the vest, then to his face. He watched her body pull inward. Her shoulders came up toward her ears. Her grip on the backpack strap tightened. He stayed where he was. He did not move closer. He kept his hands visible, resting open on his knees, and he waited. Her eyes stayed on his face, wide wet, reading him the way a child reads something they are not sure whether to run from. He said nothing. He just stayed. After a moment, she spoke. Her voice came out thin and barely there. Almost no sound at all, just breath shaped into words. Please, don't hit me. I'm already hurt. The words landed in the space between them and did not move. Cole did not react with his face. He had learned that too a long time ago. Reactions scared children. Stillness did not. He let the words sit, and he let his expression stay quiet, and he breathed in slow, and he breathed out slow, and he did not move. Then he lowered himself the rest of the way to the floor, not crouching, sitting. The way you sit on a floor when you intend to be there for a while back, straight, legs folded, settling his weight like a man who had found where he was going to be and was no longer in any particular hurry about anything. She flinched when he moved. Then she watched him sit. Then she watched him not do anything else. The silence held for a long moment. He looked at her scraped knee, at the torn backpack strap, at the wet tracks on her cheeks, and the way her small shoulders were still pulled up tight, braced for something she was still expecting. He said, "Hey." His voice came out low and even quiet enough that no one else nearby could have heard it. "I'm not here to hurt you." She did not respond. Her eyes stayed on his face, searching it. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said again. Same tone, same steadiness. She swallowed. Her throat moved visibly with the effort of it. "That's what they always say," she whispered. She hadn't meant to say it out loud. He could tell from the way she pressed her lips together right after, like she could catch the words and pull them back. He did not react with offense. He did not straighten up or sigh or look around like he was done with this. He just stayed right where he was, sitting on the hard terminal floor in his boots, in his patched vest, and he looked at her like what she had said made complete sense to him. Because it did. "Yeah," he said. "I know people say that." He let that sit. "I can't make you believe me." "That's okay. You don't have to believe me yet." She looked at his face, then back at her hands. The word "yet." He could see it register in her eyes. It meant he was not planning on going anywhere. Around them, the terminal kept moving at its slow, delayed pace. Announcements crackled overhead. A baby cried somewhere down the hall. A group of travelers dragged their bags past, not looking over. Cole kept his eyes on her. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, her lips pressed together. Then she shook her head once small. He nodded like that was a perfectly reasonable answer. "That's all right," he said. "You don't have to tell me anything." He shifted his weight slightly and reached one hand slowly toward the side pocket of his vest. He paused before he got there and looked at her. "I'm just going to get something out of my pocket. Nothing scary." She watched his hand. He pulled out a small, folded travel pack of tissues, plain white packaging, a little crumpled from being carried around. He held it out toward her, not pushing it into her space, just extending his arm so it was available. She looked at it, then at him, then at it again. She reached out quick as a bird taking a crumb and took it from his fingers without letting her hand touch his. He lowered his arm back without making anything of it. He reached into his other pocket and produced a small plastic water bottle, still sealed, the kind sold at airport vending machines. He set it down on the floor between them in the space between his knees and her feet. Not handed over, just placed there like a quiet offering with no obligation attached. "Whenever you want it," he said simply. She stared at the water bottle. The tissue pack was still in her hand. Slowly, without quite deciding to, she unfolded it and pulled one out. She pressed it against her wet cheek. It was soft and cool against her skin. She did not say thank you, but she did not move away either. A few minutes passed. The sounds of the terminal rose and fell around them. Cole sat on the floor and did not move and did not speak and did not check his watch. She took the water bottle eventually. She twisted the cap off carefully and took a small sip. She had not realized until that moment how dry her throat had been. She took another sip and held the bottle in her lap with both hands. More time passed. Then she looked at him sideways, the way children look at things they are not fully ready to look at directly. "They're looking at you," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He had been aware of it for several minutes. The way attention accumulates in a crowd, one person pausing and then another following their gaze. He did not look up to confirm it. "Yep," he said. That was it. Just, yep. No explanation, no embarrassment. She glanced sideways at him. "Doesn't that bother you?" He considered the question, genuinely not rushing to an answer. "Not really," he said. "People look at things they don't understand. That's just what people do." She was quiet for a moment. "They look at me like that sometimes too," she said. He turned his head toward her slowly. He let what she said exist in the space between them without trying to fix it or explain it away. "I know," he said finally, gentle, like he actually did know. She reached down and picked up the water bottle. She took another sip and held it in her lap. The empty tissue was folded neatly beside her knee. Another minute passed. "Do you have kids?" she asked. The question came out of nowhere the way children's questions always do. Unguarded and direct and aimed at exactly the thing that was there. Cole did not answer right away. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out his wallet. He opened it. His hands found the folded paper before anything else, and he stopped. The girl was watching his hands. "Is that from them?" she asked. He looked at her. She had seen enough of the paper to know it was handwritten. She had seen enough of his face to know it mattered. He closed the wallet. "My son," he said. "He's not here anymore." He said it the way he always said it when he said it at all, which was almost never. Flat and true and without decoration. The girl looked at him for a long moment. "My first mom is an author," she said. Her voice was very quiet. "She wasn't here. And then she was gone. And I went to a new place, and now I'm with Diane." She said it the same way he had said his own words. Flat and true and without decoration. The way children describe things that have become facts of their lives, not wounds anymore, just the shape of things. Cole looked at her. There was a long silence between them, and it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that happens between people who have just recognized something in each other that does not need to be named to be understood. He said nothing. She said nothing. The terminal went on being loud and slow around them. Then she picked up the water bottle and took another sip, and he could see that some of the tension had gone out of her shoulders. Not all of it, but some. A loud crackling burst from the intercom directly overhead, and she flinched hard, her whole body jerking upward, the water bottle nearly slipping from her hands. Her breathing changed instantly, coming faster and shallow, her chest rising and falling in short, uneven bursts. "Hey." His voice was calm and immediate, not loud, just there. "Look at me." She turned her face toward him, her eyes were wide and glassy. "You're okay," he said. "It was just the speaker, that's all." But her breathing did not slow. Her fingers had gone white around the water bottle, and her shoulders were back up near her ears. "Can you do something for me?" he asked. She gave the smallest nod. "Breathe in slow," he said, "like you're trying to smell something good. Real slow." She tried. It came out shaky and broken. "That's okay," he said. Like shaky and broken was a perfectly fine place to start. "Try again." He breathed in with her that time. Slow and visible, his broad chest rising. So she had something to follow instead of just words to chase. She tried again. It was better. Still uneven, but better. "Now let it out," he said. "Slow as you can, like you're blowing on something hot." She exhaled long and thin and trembling at first, then smoothing toward the end. "Good. That was good." Again. They breathed together, in and out, slow and steady. After a while, her shoulders came down from her ears. Her fingers loosened around the water bottle. The shaking in her hands went still. She sat a little less coiled than before. Her back still touched the pillar, but her spine had softened just enough that she no longer looked like she was bracing for impact. Cole recognized the breathing technique because he had learned it from a combat medic in his second deployment. It worked because it worked. The body did not know the difference between a forward operating base and an airport terminal when the panic came. The lungs responded to the same rhythm either way. He had used it on soldiers. He had used it on himself. He had used it on frightened children in airports in Nashville and Denver and Atlanta and Seattle, always the same way, always on the floor, at their level, always patient, always waiting for the breathing to find its own bottom. He thought briefly of Owen. Then he put that thought back where it lived and returned his attention to the girl. She was looking at him differently now, not with the wide, frightened eyes she had used at first. Something more measuring. The way you look at something you are still not sure about but are beginning to gather more information on. "You know how to do that?" she said. He nodded. "How?" He thought about how to answer honestly without saying more than she needed. "I used to help people who were hurt," he said, "in places where there weren't a lot of other options." She considered this. Like a doctor, something like that. She took a sip of water, held the bottle in her lap, turned it slowly in her hands. "My name is Nora," she said. She said it quietly and matter-of-factly, in the tone of someone who has thought it over and made a decision. Cole looked at her. He did not make a big thing of it. "Cole," he said. She nodded like she had expected something that sounded roughly like that. She looked out at the terminal. Her eyes tracked the people moving past, reading their faces the way a child reads things when they have spent enough time watching adults decide things about them. My guardian went to get food, she said. She said to stay right here. But then all the loud announcements started, and there were so many people, and I couldn't see her anymore. And I tried to go look, and then I didn't know which way I had come from, and then I fell. She looked down at her knee, and then everyone was walking too fast. She said all of this in the same measured factual tone, not performing distress, just reporting events. How long ago, Cole asked. She thought about it. A long time ago, she said, before my water bottle got empty the first time. He looked at the bottle in her hands. Small bottle, maybe 45 minutes, maybe more. Your guardian, he said. What's her name? Diane, Nora said. Diane Weston. She has brown hair and she's wearing a red coat. She said, don't talk to strangers. She paused. She looked at him sideways. I don't think she meant you specifically. Cole almost smiled. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. I'll take that, he said. Nora held the water bottle with both hands. She looked down at the tile floor and traced a slow, invisible shape on it with one finger. She's going to be so worried, Nora said. Her voice was quieter now. Not alarmed, just certain. She loves you a lot, Cole said. It was not a question. She says I'm her whole heart, Nora said simply. The way children repeat things they have heard enough times to have memorized them. Then she looked down at the bottle. She worries a lot. About a lot of things. But mostly me. She glanced up at him. Is that weird? No, he said. That's not weird at all. She accepted this and went back to tracing her invisible shape on the tile. The intercom crackled again somewhere further down the terminal, softer this time, a gate number being called elsewhere. Nora blinked but did not flinch. Cole noticed. He did not say anything about it, but a small tension left the corners of his eyes. There was a woman who had been sitting in the gate chairs, maybe 20 feet away. She had a rolling carry-on parked beside her knee and a magazine open in her lap that she had not turned a page of in several minutes. Her eyes moved from Cole to Nora and back again, slow and careful, like she was trying to read something in a language she mostly knew but was not entirely sure about. Near the window, a man in a yellow polo shirt stood with his arms crossed. He had been watching since the breathing exercise. His face was not angry exactly. It was the face of someone who had decided something might be wrong, but had not yet committed to doing anything about it. A younger man a little further down the wall had taken out his phone. He was not filming openly, but the angle was there. The phone was raised slightly higher than it needed to be for someone just checking messages. Cole was aware of all of it without looking like he was watching. He stayed exactly where he was sitting on the floor next to Nora, his posture unchanged. Nora noticed the watchers too. Her eyes tracked them with the same quiet attention she gave to everything. Why won't they just come over? She asked. Her voice held genuine curiosity, not an accusation. Cole looked briefly at the small cluster of watching faces, then back at her. Because I look like someone that they think they already know, he said simply. She frowned a little thinking about it. But they don't actually know you, she said. No, so they're wrong. Yeah, he said, they are. She considered this. She seemed to find it unsatisfying but accurate. They look at me like that sometimes too, she said. Like they've already decided something. He looked at her. She held her water bottle and looked at the floor. At my old school, she said. Before I came to live with Diane, the kids there already knew things about me because of where I came from. She said it without bitterness. It's a weird feeling, like you're trying to say something but someone already wrote what you were going to say and they wrote it wrong and you can't erase it. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Yeah, he said, I know that feeling pretty well. She looked at him sideways. Do people ever stop writing it wrong, I mean? Sometimes, he said, when you show them something different, it takes longer with some people than others. Nora nodded slowly. That seemed to satisfy her more than his previous answer. She picked up the cracker packet he had offered her earlier, the small orange one he had retrieved from a vending machine down the hall, before he sat down and opened it carefully. She ate one cracker, then the other, then brushed the crumbs from her lap with the edge of her hand. Thank you, she said, quiet and direct. You're welcome, he said. Around them, the terminal hummed on. The departure boards blinked their steady, delayed message. The coffee line near C11 had gotten shorter. The man in the yellow polo had uncrossed his arms and was checking his phone. The woman with the magazine had not moved. The young man with the phone, angled slightly upward, had at some point in the last several minutes started recording. Cole knew it without looking directly at the phone. He did not alter anything about how he was sitting or what he was doing. He kept his posture easy and his attention on the girl in front of him. Nora was looking at the far end of the corridor, the long stretch of terminal that curved gently past a coffee cart and a row of blue chairs. Every time someone appeared at the far end of the corridor, her body would tighten slightly. Then the person would get closer and not be Diane, and she would breathe out again. "She's coming," he said. She looked at him. "Diane, she's looking for you right now. She's somewhere in this airport, and she hasn't stopped looking since she lost sight of you." Nora turned back to the corridor. She held the empty cracker packet, folded neatly in her hands. "How do you know?" she asked. "Because she said you're her whole heart," Cole said. "And people don't stop looking for their whole heart." Nora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I wrote her name on the inside of my shoe." She held up one foot slightly. "In case something happened, Diane taught me. She showed me how to write it small so it would still fit." Cole looked at the shoe. He could see the faint marks of a marker on the white inner sole. Neat, careful letters. "That was smart," he said. "Diane thought of it," Nora said. "She thinks of a lot of things." She sounded proud saying it. Quietly proud the way children sound when they are proud of the people who take care of them. June Calloway had been behind the gate C-14 counter for the past hour and a half. She was a veteran of long weather delays and the particular brand of sustained human frustration that came with them. She was good at her job. She was good at knowing when something needed her attention. She had been watching the man in the leather vest and the little girl for about 20 minutes. She had run through this situation carefully. The man was big and covered in tattoos, and his vest had patches she recognized from news coverage over the years. The girl was clearly loose and had been crying, but the girl had taken the water he offered. The girl was eating the crackers he had given her. The girl was talking to him. The girl who had been pressed against that pillar like she was trying to disappear was now sitting up slightly straighter than she had been. And the man had not moved. He had not rushed her. He had not done anything that watching footage of it later she would be pointing to. She was still watching when the message came through on the gate system. A child matching the girl's description had been reported missing by a Diane Weston terminal, B-Gate B, 22. The guardian was distressed and being assisted by Terminal B staff. The child's name was Nora Shelby. June picked up her radio. She walked over. She stopped about 6 feet away and looked between them both with the careful, measured eyes of someone who has learned to read situations before she speaks into them. "Hi there," she said. Her voice was friendly but controlled. "I just wanted to check in and make sure everything is okay over here." Cole looked up at her calmly. He did not stand up. "She was alone and scared," he said. "I've been sitting with her." June looked at Nora. "Hi, sweetheart. What's your name?" Nora glanced at Cole first. A quick look, almost imperceptible. He gave a small, easy nod. "Nora," the girl said. "Hi, Nora." June crouched slightly. "Are you here with someone today?" "A grown-up?" Nora nodded. "My guardian, Diane. Do you know where Diane is right now?" Nora shook her head. "She was supposed to come back. She said stay here." Her fingers found the edge of Cole's leather vest and curled around it just barely. Not grabbing, just touching. June stood back up and looked at Cole directly. Her tone stayed polite, but something firmer had come into it. "Sir, can I ask your name, Cole?" he said. "Cole Briggs." She typed something on her tablet. "And you don't know this child?" "You're not traveling with her," "Oh," he said. "I found her here. She was alone and she was frightened. I didn't think it was right to just walk past her." June nodded slowly. She spoke into her radio. She gave Nora's name, described her, mentioned gate C-14. There was a short crackle of static, and then a voice on the other end said something that made June's shoulders drop slightly with relief. She looked down at Nora with a warmer expression. "Okay, Nora, we know what happened." She kept her voice gentle. "There was a gate change while you and your guardian were separated, and the system didn't update right away. Diane has been looking for you the whole time. She's with another staff member right now, and they're bringing her here." Nora's chin trembled. "She's coming," she asked. "She's coming," June said. "She's okay. She's very worried about you, but she's okay." Something in Nora's face loosened. A small breath left her, like she had been holding it for a very long time without knowing it. She did not let go of Cole's vest. He did not ask her to. Officer Ray Denton arrived at Gate C-14 from the direction of the main concourse. He was a broad man, mid-50s, with the bearing of someone who had spent a long time wearing a uniform and had let the uniform become part of how he occupied space. His eyes found the man in the leather vest before anything else. That was where they stayed. Cole saw him coming. He had seen him the moment he turned into the corridor. He did not change what he was doing. Denton stopped. He looked at Cole. He looked at Nora. He looked at the vest. "Sir," he said. His voice was flat and official. "I'm going to need you to step away from the child." The terminal kept moving around them, but here at Gate C-14, everything had gone very still. Cole looked up at the officer slowly. He did not stand. He kept his hands visible, resting open on his knees. "I understand your job," Cole said quietly, "and I'm not fighting you on anything." Denton took another step closer. His partner, a younger officer who had come in from the other side, was watching the exchange with full attention. "Sir, I need you to stand up and move away from the child. It's procedure." "I hear you," Cole said. His voice stayed low and even. "I just want to make sure she's okay before I do." "That's not your call to make." Cole exhaled through his nose, not in frustration, like a man choosing his footing carefully on wet ground. June stepped forward slightly. "Officer, I can confirm this man has been with the child since we were alerted. He found her distressed and stayed with her. There's been no cause for concern." Denton glanced at June. He gave a short nod that meant, "I heard you not, you changed my mind. Procedure still applies." He crouched down toward Nora and his voice shifted registers. "Hey, sweetheart, can you come with me? We're going to wait for your guardian just a little bit away, okay?" Nora stared at him. She looked at his badge, at his face, at his hands. She turned and looked at Cole instead. Cole met her eyes. He kept his expression calm, open, unhurried. "Your guardian's almost here," he said gently. "You're going to be fine." Denton straightened. He looked at Cole directly. "Sir, please stand and step aside." Cole pressed one hand to the floor and began to push himself up slowly. His knees made the sound that knees make after sitting on a hard floor for a long time. He was halfway to standing when it happened. Nora moved. She did not say anything at first. She just shifted from where she was sitting and crossed the small space between them in one quick motion. Her hands found the front of his leather vest, and she grabbed two fists of it, curling her fingers through the patches and the stitching, holding on the way someone holds on when they have been dropped before and have decided they are not willing to be dropped again. Her whole body shook once. "No," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't make him leave." Denton stopped. Cole went completely still. His hands hovered at his sides, not touching her, not pulling away. He looked down at the top of her head, at the hair that had mostly come loose during all of it, and something in his face changed. It was something quieter than soft, something that looked like it cost him. "Hey," he said, very low. "Hey, I'm right here." Nora only held tighter. Her knuckles went pale around the dark leather of his vest. She pressed the side of her face against the front of it and squeezed her eyes shut. New tears came slow and silent. Denton looked at his partner. His partner looked at the floor. June pressed her fingers to her mouth briefly. The mother nearby, a woman who had been sitting with two young boys asleep across her carry-on bags, turned away quickly, like she needed a moment to herself. Cole sat back down. He did it slowly and without discussion, lowering himself back to the floor beside her, his back against the pillar, his legs stretched out in front of him. Nora did not let go. She sat close to him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Her hands still resting against the leather of his vest. Her fingers curled lightly against it. Her breathing had begun to settle again. Denton stood there for a long moment. He looked at the child. He looked at the man. He looked at the patches on the vest. He looked at the way the girl's small hands were resting against the leather, not gripping anymore. Just present, just there. He stepped back. Not far, just enough to give the space around them some room to breathe. Cole looked at Nora. "You still hungry?" he asked. She considered this with the seriousness children bring to small questions. "A little," she said. He reached into the side pocket of his vest and produced a small wrapped packet of peanut butter crackers. He had bought it from the vending machine at the end of the corridor earlier, along with a small plastic toy, a yellow lion with a crinkled mane that he had set on the seat beside her backpack as something for her hands when she needed it. He held out the crackers. She took them. She did not open them right away. She just held the packet with both hands and looked at it. "Diane buys these sometimes," she said. "Smart lady," he said. Nora almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. She looked back at the far end of the corridor. "She's coming," Nora said. "She is," Cole said. They sat together in the noise and the light and the long wait, two unlikely people sharing a patch of floor, while the world moved past them and the storm pressed down over the city outside, and the boards kept blinking their useless steady message. In the space between them, something quiet and real had settled the way certain things settle when they are not rushed and not forced and not asked to be anything other than exactly what they are. The man in the yellow polo shirt had made up his mind. He had been standing near the window for the better part of 20 minutes, arms crossed watching the situation near gate C14, with the expression of someone who has decided he understands what he is looking at. He was not a bad man. He was a man who had absorbed a certain amount of information about the world and had organized that information into categories, and the man in the leather vest fit neatly into one of those categories, and the category was not a good one. He took out his phone. He did not film openly. He positioned the phone at chest height and pointed it toward gate C14 and pressed the button. He got several minutes of footage, enough to see the man in the vest sitting on the floor next to the small girl, enough to see the size of him, the beard, the tattoos, the patches. Not enough to see the water bottle placed carefully on the floor between them without pressure attached. Not enough to see the tissue offered without expectation. Not enough to see the breathing exercise, the open hands, the hour of sitting without once checking his watch. The man in the yellow polo typed a caption. It said what he believed he was seeing, which was a large and dangerous-looking man cornering a small girl all at gate C14 of Charlotte Douglas International Airport, while airport staff stood nearby and did nothing. He posted it. Within 4 minutes, the post had been shared 11 times. Within 12 minutes, it had been shared over 200. The comments accumulated the way they accumulate when a post finds the right current of outrage. People who had never been to Charlotte Douglas, who had never seen the man or the girl, were forming opinions with the confidence of eyewitnesses. Someone tagged a local news account. The local news account responded. Officer Ray Denton received a call on his radio 17 minutes after the post went up. He listened. His jaw tightened. He looked across the gate area at Cole Briggs sitting on the floor next to the child, and his expression did something complicated that he did not let show in his posture. He had already run the ID. No warrants, no flags, clean record going back 22 years. He had already spoken to June Calloway, who had given him a calm and measured account of what she had observed. He had already watched with his own eyes the way the child had reached for the man's vest when Denton asked her to move away. None of that had come with the video. The video was arriving now, framed in a way that made it mean something different from what Denton had seen with his own eyes. And the video was being watched by people who had phones and opinions and the ability to make both of those things very loud very quickly. The second call came from the regional security desk. The voice on the other end was clipped and professional and careful in the way that voices become careful when they know their words might matter later. It referenced the post. It referenced the volume of incoming inquiries. It referenced protocol regarding unaccompanied minors and extended contact with non-related adults. It used the word detainment. Denton walked back toward gate C14. Cole saw him coming. He already knew what this was. He did not change his posture. He did not shift or tense or make any of the small adjustments that people make when they are bracing for something. He just saw Denton coming, and he waited. Nora was holding the wrapped cracker packet in her lap. She had finished the crackers and was now holding the small yellow lion he had set beside her earlier, turning it slowly in both hands, the crinkled mane catching the light. Denton stopped in front of them. He looked at Cole. His voice was even. "Mr. Briggs, I'm going to need you to come with us." Cole looked up at him. Nora's hands went still on the lion. "I'm not doing anything wrong," Cole said. His voice was quiet. "I found her alone and I stayed with her. That's the whole of it." "I understand," Denton said. "And I'm not saying you did anything wrong. There's been a report filed, and whenever there's an unaccompanied minor involved with a non-related adult for an extended period, we're required to follow protocol. That means a brief detainment for identity verification and a statement." Cole held the officer's gaze for a moment. Then he nodded once. He began to stand, and Nora felt the shift in his weight before she understood what was happening. She looked up at him and then at Denton, and something in her face went very still and very careful, the way a child's face goes when it has learned to read rooms. "Where are they taking him?" she asked. She directed the question at June, who was standing a few feet away. "Just to answer some questions," June said. Her voice was gentle. "He'll be okay." Nora looked at Cole. "I'll be back," he said. "They have some things they need to check. That's their job." Nora looked at him for a long moment. Her jaw was set in the way that children set their jaws when they are trying very hard not to show what they are feeling. Cole set the small yellow lion down on the seat beside her carefully, like he was making sure she still had something after he was gone. Then he straightened up and walked with Denton toward the staff quarter without looking back. Not because he did not want to, because he understood that looking back would make it harder for her, and making it harder for her was not something he was willing to do. Nora watched him go. She watched the black leather vest move through the crowd. She watched the Iron Road MC patch catch the light and then disappear between shoulders and rolling suitcases. She picked up the small yellow lion and held it in both hands. She did not squeeze it. She just held it and watched the place where he had been until there was nothing left to watch. June Calloway was speaking quietly into her radio, working on re-establishing contact with the Terminal B staff who had Diane Weston. The system was overloaded from the storm reroutes and running slow. Half the passenger manifest from the last 2 hours had not synced properly. She was patient and methodical, and she kept working. Nora sat by the pillar with the line in her hands. She opened her backpack with careful movements and took out the small notebook she kept inside it for long trips. It had a purple cover and lined pages inside. She took out the purple pencil she always carried. She opened the notebook to a fresh page. She thought for a moment. Then she began to write. Her letters were large and slightly uneven, and she pressed the pencil hard into the page the way she always did when she was concentrating on making something clear. She wrote slowly and with great care. When she was finished, she tore the page out along the perforated edge. She folded it twice. She held it in her hands. She looked at the door through which Cole had gone. She waited. Diane Weston had been in Terminal B for 47 minutes. She had gone to get food from the sandwich counter near Gate B, 18. She had told Nora to stay at Gate C, 14, that she would be back in 15 minutes. She had been back in 11, and Nora had not been there. She had checked the women's restroom first, then the family restroom near the elevator. Then she had gone back to the gate and looked again as if Nora might have reappeared while she was gone. Then she had gone to the nearest staff counter and reported a missing child and given Nora's description and her own name and contact information. And then she had stood at that counter for 23 minutes while the system crawled through its storm-delayed processes and produced nothing useful. A young staff member had walked with her through Terminal B. Then they had taken the connector corridor toward Terminal C. Then Diane's phone had finally connected to the airport's Wi-Fi properly for the first time since the delays started, and she had a signal, and she called the main airport number, and she gave Nora's name and description again, and this time the voice on the other end said there was a possible match at Gate C-14, and could she make her way there? She was already running. She came around the bend in the corridor at a pace that was faster than walking and slower than running, only because she was navigating around rolling suitcases and groups of travelers who did not know there was anything to get out of the way of. Her red coat moved ahead of her like a signal flag. Her eyes found Nora before anything else. Nora saw her at the same moment. The small body by the pillar went completely still for 1 second. Then she was on her feet. The yellow lion stayed on the seat. The folded piece of paper stayed in her hand. Diane. The word came out broken and full at the same time. Diane hit her knees in the middle of the corridor before Nora even reached her. She dropped right there on the airport floor, her red coat spreading around her, her arms opening wide. Nora ran into her, and the impact was soft. Just two people holding on arms wrapping tight and tighter. Diane's face buried in Nora's hair, pressing her lips there, breathing in and breathing out. Her whole body shook once. "I've got you," Diane said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, rough at the edges, like it had been dragged a long way to get there. "I've got you, baby. I'm right here." Nora did not say anything. She just held on. Her small fist grabbed the back of Diane's red coat and did not let go. People moved around them in the corridor. Some slowed down. A man in a business suit paused and looked and then pressed his lips together and walked away a little more quietly than before. After a long moment, Diane pulled back just enough to look at Nora's face. She held both of Nora's cheeks in her palms and looked at her the way people look at something they very nearly lost. "Are you hurt?" Her eyes dropped to the scraped knee, the dried blood on the shin. "Oh, sweetheart, it doesn't hurt anymore," Nora said. Diane looked at it another moment anyway. Then she pulled Nora close again. "I am so sorry," she said into her hair. "The gate changed and the announcements were everywhere. And I couldn't find you and my phone wasn't connecting and I just—" She stopped, breathed. "I should have had a better plan. I should have had a meeting spot." "It's okay," Nora said. "It is not okay," Diane said, firmly but quietly. "You were alone. That is not okay." Nora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I wasn't alone the whole time." Diane went still. She lifted her head slowly. She looked at June Calloway, who was standing a few feet away with her tablet against her chest. Then she looked past June at the gate area at the pillar where Nora had been sitting. "Where is he?" Diane asked. June cleared her throat. "There was a report filed through the regional desk, an online post that raised some concerns. Protocol required that we bring the individual in for identity verification and a statement. He's in the security office." Diane looked at her. "He's in the security office." "Yes, ma'am. It's standard procedure when there's been extended contact between a non-related adult and an unaccompanied minor." Diane was quiet for a long moment. Her hand rested on the back of Nora's head in the absent automatic way that hands rest on the heads of children who have been safely returned. "What was on the patch?" Diane asked. "His vest." "What did the patch say?" June looked at her carefully. "Iron Road MC," the words landed. Diane's expression did something very slow and very specific. Not surprise, not shock, something more like the feeling of a room coming into focus after a long time of being blurry. Her lips parted slightly. She pressed them back together. "Iron Road," she said. "Charlotte chapter." It was not a question. It was recognition. She closed her eyes for one moment. Then she opened them. She looked at Nora. She tucked a strand of hair behind Nora's ear with 2 fingers. "I need to make a call," she said. "Can you stay with June for a few minutes?" Nora looked at her. "Is he going to be okay?" Diane looked at her daughter. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were very clear. "Yes," she said. "He is. I'm going to make sure of it." She took out her phone. She found the contact she was looking for. She had not called this number in over 2 years, but she had kept it because some numbers you keep even when you think you will not need them again, because some debts do not stop being debts just because time has passed. The phone rang 3 times. Rosa Diane said when the call connected. "I know it's been a while. I need you to tell me something right now. 2 years ago when you told me about the man who found you in the courthouse in 2013, the one who vouched for me, the one who stood outside that door. You said you'd seen him before and you knew the club." A pause. "Was his name Cole Briggs?" The answer came quickly. Diane exhaled. It came out shaky and slow, the breath of someone who has been holding something for a long time. "Thank you," she said. "Yes, I'll tell you everything later. I promise." She hung up. She turned to Denton, who had returned to the gate area after handing Cole off to the security office. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge of this security office right now," she said. Her voice had changed. The mother's voice was still there underneath, but the other voice had come up over it. The lawyer's voice, clear and precise. Denton looked at her. "That would be Supervisor Howell." "Then take me to him." She looked at Nora. She was going to ask June to stay with her again, but Nora was already shaking her head. "I'm coming," Nora said. She said it in the tone that meant the discussion was over. Diane looked at her daughter for a moment. Then she took her hand. They walked together. The security office was a long, narrow room behind a door marked "Staff Only" at the far end of the C concourse. It had the flat fluorescent light and the smell of recycled air that all rooms like it have. There were cameras in 2 corners, a row of chairs along one wall, a desk with a monitor showing feeds from various points of the terminal. Supervisor Walt Howell was a compact man in his late 50s, with silver hair combed neatly to one side and reading glasses hanging from his collar. He had the look of a man who had been managing difficult situations since before many of his current staff were born, and who had developed over the course of that career a certain economy of expression. Cole Briggs sat in the chair across from Howell's desk. His posture was the same as it had been on the floor of the terminal. Settled, not performing calm, just actually calm in the way that people are calm when they have built up a genuine reserve of it. Howell asked his questions. Cole answered them. He said what he had done and why he had done it in simple declarative sentences, and he let them mean what they meant. I found her alone. She was scared. I sat with her. I didn't think it was right to walk past her. Howell looked at the tablet his assistant Gail had placed on the desk. He took his glasses off. The tablet had 11 entries on it. Gail had found them in 20 minutes by cross-referencing incident reports across regional airport systems. She had filtered for unaccompanied minor situations involving informal civilian intervention over the past 4 years. 11 entries, different airports, different dates, different staff members writing the reports. The description in the notes column of each entry was almost identical. Male, mid-40s, dark beard, leather vest, Iron Road MC patch. Remained with unaccompanied child until guardian located. No incident, no charges, departed without providing name. Howell read through all 11 entries. He did not read quickly. He looked at the dates, the locations, the specific details recorded by 11 different staff members in 11 different airports who had never met each other and had produced independently the same portrait of the same man doing the same thing. He set the tablet down. He looked at Cole Briggs. He did not say anything for a moment. A knock at the door. Gail opened it. Her expression had the particular quality of someone who has just found something and is not entirely sure how to account for it. "Sir," she said, "there's a Diane Weston outside. She's the guardian of the child. She's asking to speak to you. She has the child with her." Howell looked at Cole, then at Gail. "Send them in." Diane came through the door with Nora beside her, Nora's hand in hers. Denton followed and stood near the wall. Diane looked at Cole first. A brief, direct look that carried something in it that was not quite relief and not quite recognition, but was close to both. Then she looked at Howell. "My name is Diane Weston," she said. "I'm Nora's legal guardian. I'm also a licensed attorney in the state of Virginia, and I want to make sure everyone in this room is operating with accurate information before any decisions are made." Howell gestured toward the chair across from him. Diane sat. She kept Nora close beside her, Nora's hand still in hers. "Go ahead," Howell said. Diane took a breath. Then she began. She had been 27 years old and 3 days into a custody proceeding that was going wrong when she sat down on a bench in the hallway outside a family court in Richmond, Virginia, in September of 2013. The proceeding involved a child who had been placed in her care as a foster child and whom she was attempting to legally adopt. The biological family had contested. The biological family had resources and a lawyer who knew how to use them. Diane had a lawyer she could barely afford, and documents she did not fully understand, and no support system in that building or anywhere near it. She had sat down on that bench because her legs had stopped working. A man had sat down beside her. When she looked up, she had seen the vest first, the patches, the Iron Road MC insignia. She had felt for one reflexive moment the kind of fear that goes with unfamiliar symbols in unfamiliar places. And then the man had said, "You look like someone who could use a person in their corner today." That was all he said. He stayed. He found out in the course of sitting beside her for 20 minutes while she tried to hold herself together that she was attempting to navigate a complex adoption proceeding without adequate legal support. He made one phone call. He called a woman named Rosa Fletcher, who ran a legal aid clinic 2 blocks from the courthouse and who specialized in exactly this kind of case. Rosa came. She reviewed the documents. She identified 2 procedural errors that the opposing attorney had been counting on going unnoticed. She filed a motion that afternoon. The man had also walked into that courtroom hallway with Diane when she finally had to go back in. He stood where she could see him through the small window in the door. He stood there for 3 hours. He did not leave until it was over. The proceeding did not resolve that day. It took 4 more months. But the motion Rosa filed changed the trajectory of the entire case. Diane won the adoption 14 months later. The child she adopted was now standing beside her in this room, holding her hand. The room was very quiet when Diane finished. Nora was looking at Cole. Cole was looking at his hands on his knees. Howell cleared his throat. He looked at Diane. "Can this be verified, Rosa Fletcher?" Diane said. "She runs the Fletcher Legal Aid Clinic in Richmond. I called her 20 minutes ago." Howell looked at Gail. Gail was already dialing. She had Rosa on speaker so that Howell could hear. Rosa confirmed the broad details of what Diane had described without being prompted. She confirmed the man's name. She confirmed the club. She added without being asked that Cole Briggs had helped at least 3 other women in similar situations in that courthouse over the span of 2 years. Always the same way, always without asking for anything, always without leaving contact information. She had tried to find him afterward to thank him. She had not been able to. Gail ended the call. Howell took off his reading glasses. He set them on the desk. He looked at the tablet with the 11 incident reports. He looked at Cole. He looked at Nora, who was standing beside Diane, still holding her hand, still watching Cole with the quiet, measuring attention she gave to everything. He stood up. He moved to the monitor on the side wall and pulled up the security footage from gate C14. The timestamp started at the point 1 hour and 14 minutes earlier when Cole had first come into frame walking through the C concourse. Howell watched. He watched Cole slow. He watched Cole stop. He watched Cole stand at a distance for a full minute and a half, just watching the girl by the pillar, not approaching, not moving, just making sure he understood what he was seeing before he moved any closer. He watched Cole cross the space at an angle, slowly keeping himself visible in her peripheral view. He watched Cole crouch and then lower himself all the way to the floor. He watched the water bottle placed on the floor between them, not handed over, just set down like a quiet offering with no obligation attached. He watched Cole sit on the hard terminal floor for 67 minutes, without once looking at his phone, without once looking toward the exits. He watched the moment Nora grabbed Cole's vest when Denton first asked her to move away. He watched Cole go completely still, both hands hovering at his sides, not touching her, not pulling away, just completely deliberately still. Howell turned off the monitor. He stood with his back to the room for a moment. When he turned around, his expression was that of a man who has run a long calculation and arrived at a result he respects, even if it costs him something to acknowledge it. He looked at Denton. "Get him out," he said. Denton straightened slightly. "Now," Howell said. Denton left the room. Howell looked at Cole. His voice was even and direct. "Mr. Briggs, I owe you an apology. The process that brought you in here was triggered by external pressure that should not have been the determining factor in that decision. The footage we've reviewed is clear. I also want you to know that the post circulating online has been addressed. Our communications office provided the full footage to the outlets that contacted us. The individual who posted it has taken it down." He paused. "Your conduct today and your conduct over the past 4 years in 11 separate instances across multiple airports does not warrant any further action from this office." Cole looked at him. He said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "All right, no edge in it, no satisfaction." He just meant it plainly the way he had meant everything else he had said in this room. Howell held his gaze. He had been in this job for 19 years. He had dealt with hundreds of situations involving hundreds of people. "My grandson," Howell said, "he's 6, rides his bike in circles in my driveway every Sunday." He paused. "I think about what it would mean for him to be separated from us in a place like this." He looked at Cole directly. "I'm glad you were here today." Cole looked at him for a long moment. "I'm glad I was here too," he said. Nora had been watching all of it. She had been standing beside Diane with her hand in Diane's hand, and she had followed every word with the careful attention she gave to things that mattered. She looked at Diane. Diane looked down at her. Something passed between them without words. Nora's free hand was still holding the folded piece of paper she had torn from her notebook while she waited. She held it carefully, the purple pencil letters pressed hard into the page. She looked at the door. She waited. Outside in the narrow staff corridor, Cole walked beside Denton. Not behind him. Beside him. Denton had made that small adjustment without announcing it. Cole did not make it awkward. He walked at the same pace, and he did not say anything, and he did not need to. They pushed through the door marked Terminal Access. The full noise and light of Gate C14 came back at him all at once. The hum of people, the garbled overhead announcements, the smell of coffee from the cart near the newsstand, the rolling wheels of luggage on polished floor. He blinked once. Denton stopped at the threshold. Mr. Howell asked me to pass along his apologies, he said. His voice was flat but not unkind. Cole looked at him. All right, he said. He heard it. He accepted it. He was ready to move on. Denton gave a short nod and stepped back through the door. Cole stood at the edge of the terminal. He looked toward gate C14, the pillar, the spot where he had sat for over an hour. It was not empty. Nora was standing at the edge of the gate area slightly ahead of Diane, holding the folded piece of paper in both hands with the grip of someone who has been holding something carefully and is about to offer it. She saw him the moment he came through the door. He saw her. For one moment, they both just stood there 20 feet apart in the noise and the light and the steady delayed hum of the terminal and looked at each other. Then Nora walked toward him, not running, walking with the deliberate, steady pace of someone who has decided exactly what they are going to do and is doing it. She stopped in front of him. She looked at him. She held out the paper. He took it. He unfolded it. The letters were large and slightly uneven and pressed hard into the page purple pencil on blue-lined notebook. Paper, thank you for not leaving me when I was scared. Cole stood very still. He read it once. Then he read it again, not because the words were unclear, but because he needed a moment in which to hold them before he did anything else. He reached into his jacket, into the inside pocket. He took out his wallet. He opened it. His hands were steady. They were always steady. He took out the folded paper. The old one, the one with the soft fold lines and the rounded corners and the child's handwriting inside. He held both pieces of paper in his hands. The one from Owen was smaller. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges. The letters inside were large and uneven and pressed hard into the page, the way a 9-year-old's letters look when he is trying to make sure his father can read them from far away. The one from Nora was fresh. The paper was crisp. The letters were large and uneven and pressed hard into the page the way an 8-year-old's letters look when she's concentrating on making something clear. Cole looked at both pieces of paper in his hands. He did not look up. He did not speak. He folded Nora's paper carefully along the lines she had put into it. He put it in his wallet beside Owen's. He closed the wallet. He put it in his pocket. He looked at Nora. She was watching him with that quiet, measuring attention. She had seen everything. She had understood more of it than most adults would have given her credit for. She did not say anything. Neither did he. It was enough. Diane stood at the edge of the security office doorway and watched Cole put his wallet back into his pocket. She had been watching him for the last several minutes with the quiet attention of someone who is trying to reconcile two different versions of the same thing. The version she had carried in her memory for 12 years, incomplete and unresolved, just a large man in a leather vest who had appeared beside her when she was at her lowest and had done what needed to be done and then disappeared. And the version standing in front of her, now older than she remembered, grayer in the beard, but recognizably, unmistakably the same. She had spent 3 years looking for him after the adoption was finalized. She had gone back to the courthouse. She had asked Rosa Fletcher what she knew. She had driven through the part of Charlotte where Rosa said the Iron Road MC had a clubhouse twice and sat in her car in front of it for 20 minutes each time without going in because she did not know what she would say if she did. She had eventually stopped looking. Not because she had stopped wanting to find him, but because life kept moving and Nora needed her present and some debts she had come to accept were going to remain unpaid simply because the person you owed them to had chosen not to be findable. And now here he was. She took a breath. She walked toward him. He saw her coming and turned slightly toward her as she approached, giving her the space to close the distance on her own terms. She stopped a few feet in front of him. She looked at him the way she had looked at the two pieces of paper, like she was trying to account for something whose dimensions she had not fully understood until this moment. "You remember me," she said. It was not a question. Cole looked at her. He gave a short nod. "The courthouse," he said. "Richmond, September 2013. Diane pressed her lips together. Her eyes were clear and very direct. "I looked for you," she said, "for 3 years after the adoption was finalized. I looked for you." Cole said nothing. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "I had a whole thing worked out, what I was going to say." She let out a small breath. "I rehearsed it more times than I want to admit." He waited. She looked at Nora, who was standing a few feet away holding the small yellow lion and watching both of them with the particular attention she reserved for things she understood to be important. Diane looked back at Cole. Because of what you did that day, she said, I have her. She paused. She's not here because of me alone. She's not here because the system worked or because things went the way they were supposed to go. She's here because a stranger sat down beside me when I had nothing left and connected me to the right person and stood outside a door for 3 hours because I needed someone to be there. She paused again. She's my whole heart, and she exists in my life because of you. Cole looked at her for a long moment. You did the work, he said. I just helped you find someone who could help you do it. That's not a small thing, Diane said. He said nothing. It's not a small thing, she said again, quietly, not arguing, just making sure it landed. He looked at Nora. Nora was looking back at him with the lion in her hands, the crinkled mane slightly compressed from where she had been holding it. She did good today, Cole said. She held up better than most adults would have. Diane looked at her daughter. A small smile moved across her face, the specific kind of smile that comes from pride, mixed with the residue of fear that is not entirely drained away yet. She's been holding up better than she should have to her whole life, Diane said. She's earned the right to be steady. Nora, who had very good hearing and had been listening to everything, said, I could hear you. Diane looked at her. I know, she said. That was for you too. Nora seemed to accept this. She looked at Cole. She held out the small yellow lion. You should keep this, she said. You bought it. He looked at it, then at her. I bought it for you, he said. She considered this seriously. You already gave me the crackers and the water and the tissues. She looked down at the lion. And I already gave you something. He was quiet for a moment. Fair enough, he said. She kept the lion. Supervisor Howell came out of the security office doorway and stood a few feet away. He had his reading glasses back on and his tablet in his hand, and he looked like a man who had several procedural items he needed to address. He looked at Cole. He looked at Diane. He cleared his throat. Miss Weston, he said. Mr. Briggs, I want to address a few things formally before you go. Diane turned to face him. Her posture had not changed. Please, she said. Howell held the tablet at his side. He spoke carefully. The incident report filed by Officer Denton earlier this afternoon has been reviewed and will be amended. The security footage from Gate C14, covering the entire period of Mr. Briggs's contact with your daughter, has been logged and preserved. We have compiled 11 prior incident reports from regional airport systems covering the past 4 years, all of which document similar situations in which Mr. Briggs remained with an unaccompanied child until a guardian was located. All 11 ended without incident. He paused. The post that was put up on social media this afternoon has been fully addressed. Our communications office provided unedited footage from Gate C14 to every outlet that contacted us today. The post has been taken down by the person who put it up. There will be no further coverage that misrepresents what happened here. He looked directly at Cole. I want to say on behalf of this airport and this security office that your conduct today was not what the initial report suggested it was. And I want to say that the 11 prior instances we found in the system represent something that deserves to be said plainly. What you did for those children, including this one, including the ones we only know about because a staff member wrote 4 lines in a report that matters. Cole looked at him. He said, I appreciate that. Howell gave a short nod. He looked like he wanted to say something else. My grandson, he said. He's 6, rides his bike in circles in my driveway every Sunday. He looked at the tablet and then back up. I'm glad you were here today. Cole looked at him for a long moment. I'm glad I was here too, he said. Howell nodded once more. He went back into the security office. The door closed softly behind him. Denton was still standing near the wall. He had been standing there through all of it, arms at his sides, no, not crossed the way they had been earlier. He was looking at a spot on the floor in front of him with the expression of a man who is working through something internally and has not finished working through it. After a moment, he looked up at Cole. He did not say anything, but he gave a single nod, slow and deliberate. Cole returned it. That was all. That was enough. June Calloway had come back to the gate area during the exchange with Howell. She was standing near the gate counter with her tablet. She looked at Cole and she looked at Nora and she looked at Diane, and her expression held the particular warmth of someone who has been involved in something difficult and is relieved at how it has resolved. She held out a folded piece of paper toward Cole. He looked at it. That's the number for Rosa Fletcher at the Legal Aid Clinic in Richmond, June said. She called the office while you were in with Supervisor Howell. She said you never returned her calls. She said she has been hoping to reach you for a long time. She said it would mean something to her if you called. Cole looked at the paper. He took it. He looked at it for a moment. Rosa Fletcher. The number had a Richmond area code. He recognized the prefix. He put it in the chest pocket of his vest. June went back to the gate counter. Around them, the terminal had shifted in its energy. The storm was beginning to ease outside, not gone, but pulling back from its worst. The departure boards had started updating again, slowly at first, and then in a cascade of new gate assignments and revised boarding times that sent clusters of travelers moving in new directions with the renewed urgency of people who had been waiting a long time and were suddenly in motion. Gate C14 was one of them. The screen had changed from delayed to boarding in 15 minutes. Diane saw it. She looked at the board and then at Nora. Nora had seen it too. She was looking at Cole. He was looking at the board. He looked back at her. "There it is," he said. "Your gate's opening." Nora held the yellow lion in both hands. She turned it over once. The mane crinkled. She looked at the gate. She looked at the people beginning to gather their bags and move toward the counter. She looked at Cole. "Will I see you again?" she asked. He held her gaze. He thought about Owen, about tuck-in routines he never got to have and school plays he never attended and the bike with the training wheels he had bought and shipped to Owen's third foster placement that had arrived 3 weeks after Owen was moved to the group home. He thought about 12 years of carrying a folded piece of paper in his wallet and 14 airports in 4 years and 11 children who had needed someone to sit on the floor and stay. He thought about the 2 pieces of paper in his wallet, side by side now, the old one and the new one. "You never know," he said, "who's going to be sitting on the floor at the next airport." Nora looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Not the small, uncertain nod of someone accepting an unsatisfying answer. A real nod, slow and deliberate, the nod of someone who has understood something and is confirming that they have understood it. She stepped forward. She wrapped both arms around him, the lion still in one hand, its crinkled mane pressed against his vest. She pressed the side of her face against the front of his jacket, and she held on for a moment, and Cole put one hand very gently on the back of her head, the same way he had in the first minutes after she ran to him, careful and steady, the way you hold something that matters. Then she stepped back. She looked up at him one more time. Her eyes were clear, not wet, clear and direct and very calm. Then she turned around and walked back to Diane and took Diane's hand. Diane looked at Cole over Nora's head. She did not say anything. There was nothing left to say that the last hour and a half had not already said more clearly than words could. She just looked at him with the direct and uncomplicated gaze of someone who has settled an account that has been open for a long time. Then she put her hand briefly on his arm. Just for a second, her fingers rested on the sleeve of his jacket on top of the leather, and then they lifted away. She turned toward the gate. Cole watched them go. He watched Nora look back once at about 20 feet and give him a small wave with the hand that was not holding the lion. He gave a small nod back. She turned forward again and kept walking. He watched them until they were part of the line of travelers moving toward the gate counter. He watched until the red of Diane's coat and the blue of Nora's jacket were indistinguishable from the rest of the colors in the crowd. He watched until there was nothing left to watch. Then he stood in the terminal and let the noise come back around him. The overhead announcement system crackled through a sequence of gate changes and boarding calls. A family with 4 children negotiated their way through the space in front of him, the youngest one riding on the father's shoulders and reaching up toward the signs overhead. A pair of older men in matching golf shirts compared notes on a delayed connection with the resigned camaraderie of people who have found someone to be inconvenienced alongside. The storm was pulling back outside. You could see it in the light through the terminal windows. Still gray, still overcast, but the flat, brutal press of the worst of it had lifted, and the rain against the glass was gentler now, less horizontal, more like rain and less like something with intentions. Cole picked up his bag from where he had left it against the base of the pillar. The same pillar. He noticed that without deciding to notice it. The smudge on the baseboard where Nora's backpack had rested was still there. He put his bag over his shoulder. He stood there for another moment, not because he needed to, but because there was no particular reason to rush, And he had learned a long time ago that not rushing was its own form of discipline. The discipline of letting a moment close itself completely before you walked away from it. He thought about Owen. He thought about September 2013, a courthouse in Richmond, a woman pressing her palms flat against her thighs on a bench in a hallway because she was trying to keep her hands from shaking. He had not planned to sit beside her. He had been coming from a different hearing, an unrelated matter, and he had seen her on that bench, and he had stopped the same way he had stopped today, the same internal register reading the same signal. Someone needs a person in their corner. He had not known that the woman on that bench would spend 3 years looking for him. He had not known that the child she was fighting for in that courtroom would be standing in a Charlotte airport terminal 12 years later, pressing the side of her face against his vest and holding on like someone who had decided he was worth holding on to. He had not known any of it. That was the thing about it. You did not know. You never knew which of the moments was going to be the one that kept pulling years later in directions you could not have predicted. You only knew whether to stop or keep walking. He always stopped. He had stopped in Denver for a 7-year-old boy who was sitting on the floor near a baggage carousel while passengers moved past him like water around a stone. Cole had sat with that boy for 52 minutes until his grandmother came running from the parking structure, one shoe half off, out of breath and weeping. He had stopped in Atlanta for a 14-year-old girl who had missed her connection and did not speak much English and was standing near a gate counter with a piece of paper in her hand and no idea what to do with it. He had found a staff member who spoke enough Spanish to help her rebook, and he had stayed until she was on a new flight and had someone at the gate who knew she was there. He had stopped in Nashville for a 10-year-old boy who had the measured too-still quality of a child who has learned that stillness is the safest response to confusion. He had sat beside that boy and bought him a bottle of juice from the vending machine and waited with him until an airport employee came to escort him to the connecting gate where his father was waiting. 11 times in 4 years, in airports from Charlotte to Seattle. He had not been keeping count. He had not thought of it as a pattern or a practice or anything with a name. He had just stopped. Every time. Owen had been 9 years old, 61 pounds. He had spent the last 2 years of his life in placements where no one sat with him on the floor and no one taught him how to breathe when the panic came, and no one stayed until the morning just to make sure the night had ended. Cole had been 3,000 miles away and completely unreachable. He carried that. He would always carry it. There was no version of the story where he did not carry it. But there were also 11 children who had sat on airport floors and been not alone. 12 now. He exhaled. He reached into his chest pocket and felt the folded paper June had given him. Rosa Fletcher's number. Rosa had been trying to reach him for years. He knew that. He had seen the calls and not answered them, not out of hostility, but out of the same instinct that made him leave airports without providing his name. The part of him that felt with a certainty he had never been fully able to examine that being thanked was not the point, and might in fact be the thing that changed the feeling of it into something smaller than it was. He stood in the terminal with his hand on the folded paper. He thought about what Diane had said. She's my whole heart, and she exists in my life because of you. He thought about Nora's question. Do you have kids? He thought about Owen's letter. He had been wrong about the thank you. He could see that now, standing in a Charlotte airport terminal with a piece of paper in his chest pocket and 2 folded notes in his wallet. He had been wrong about it in the particular way that people are wrong about things when they have been operating from a wound for so long that the wound has started to feel like wisdom. Being found was not the same as being diminished. Being thanked was not the same as making it smaller. He stood there with his hand on Rosa's number, and he thought about that for a moment. Then he took out the paper. He unfolded it. He looked at the number. He put it back in his chest pocket, but differently this time. Not tucked in, just resting there, easy to reach. He would call. Not today, but soon. He would call. He started walking. He moved at the unhurried pace he always moved at, steady, and even making space around him in the crowd, the way large men do without effort. He passed the coffee cart near the newsstand. The line was gone now, most of the long-waiting travelers having finally gotten what they came for or given up. A teenager was wiping down the espresso machine with a cloth, moving quickly, already thinking about the next wave. He passed the gate where the family of 5 had made their small camp on the floor earlier. They were gone now. Their spot on the floor was clean. The suitcase wall dismantled the family, presumably somewhere between here and wherever they were going next. A single juice box sat on the floor beside the outlet where the father had been charging his phone. It had been forgotten. Cole stepped around it. He passed gate C11, where the blueberry muffin sign was still taped to the pastry case, and the coffee woman was finally, after the long morning of not looking up. Looking up, she caught his eye briefly and gave him the small nod of someone who has been through a long shared ordeal and is beginning to see the end of it. He returned the nod. He walked. At the far end of the corridor, near the connector that led back toward the main terminal, a young woman was sitting on the floor against the wall. She was maybe 19 or 20. She had her knees pulled up and her arms wrapped around them and a backpack leaning against the wall beside her. She was staring at the floor in front of her with the vacant focus of someone who has been awake too long and is running on the far side of empty. Cole slowed. He stopped. He looked at her for a moment. He ran the same check he always ran, the quality of her distress, whether she was alone, whether anyone else was paying attention, whether this was a person who needed someone to stop or a person who just needed to be left in peace. He could usually tell the difference. She looked up. She had dark circles under her eyes and her hair was pulled back in a way that had started the day neat and had not remained so. She looked at him at the size of him at the vest, and her expression did the thing that expressions often did at the first sight of him, a small tightening, a pulling back. He held up one hand slightly palm out. "Easy, you okay?" he asked. His voice was quiet, the same voice he had used on the floor of gate C14 all afternoon. She looked at him for a moment. "I missed my connection," she said. She said it with the flat exhaustion of someone reporting a fact they have already processed past the point of emotion. "I was supposed to be in Cincinnati by noon. I haven't been able to get through to the rebooking line. My phone is at 11%. I don't have a charger." Cole reached into the outer pocket of his bag. He had a short charging cable and a compact power bank he had been carrying for the better part of 3 years, since a situation in Denver where a lost teenager had needed one. He held it out toward her. "Should get you to about 60%, he said. "Enough to make your calls." She stared at the power bank. She looked up at him. "You don't have to be scared of me," he said. "I'm just a guy who's been in a few airports." She looked at him for another moment. Then she reached out and took the power bank. Her hand did not shake. She plugged in her phone and watched the charging indicator come on, and she let out a breath. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. He started to straighten up. She said, "Are you Iron Road?" He looked at her. She had seen the patch on the back of his vest when he crouched. "Yeah," he said. "My uncle was Iron Road," she said. "Louisville chapter. He died 4 years ago." She looked at the charging phone in her hand. He was a good man. He was the kind of guy who stopped. If someone needed something, he just stopped. Cole looked at her steadily. "That sounds about right," he said. She pressed her lips together briefly. Then she looked up at him with clear, direct eyes. He met her gaze and held it for a moment. The particular quiet that comes between two people who have just shared something true settled between them, and neither of them needed to do anything more with it than let it exist. "You'll get through on the rebooking line in the next few minutes," he said. "The storm's clearing. The lines should free up." She nodded. He straightened up fully. He adjusted his bag on his shoulder and started walking. He found a seat near a window at the far end of the main terminal, the same reason he always chose the far end. Back to the wall, open space in front. He sat down. He put his bag at his feet. He reached into his jacket and took out his wallet. He opened it. He did not take the papers out this time. He just opened the wallet and looked at them, both of them folded together in the same slot, the old worn one and the new crisp one side by side. He closed the wallet. He put it back in his pocket. Outside the terminal windows, the sky was lightening. Not warm yet, not blue, but the flat pewter press of the storm was breaking apart at the edges, and through the gaps came something closer to actual light. The runways were wet and shining. A ground crew in orange vest was moving across the tarmac with the purposeful efficiency of people who have been waiting for the weather to give them their work back and are glad to have it. The first plane was taxiing toward a gate. Cole watched it. He watched the way it moved across the wet surface of the runway, heavy and slow and certain-headed, exactly where it was supposed to go. He reached into his chest pocket. He took out Rosa Fletcher's number. He looked at it for a long moment in the clearing afternoon light. Then he took out his phone. He dialed. It rang twice. A voice answered, warm and professional and carrying the particular quality of someone who has spent a career showing up for people who needed showing up for. Rosa Fletcher. Cole looked out the window at the clearing sky and the wet runways and the plane moving toward its gate. Rosa, he said, it's Cole Briggs. A pause on the other end, then a breath, then quietly, the kind of quietly that holds a long time inside it. I have been waiting for this call for 9 years. He sat in his chair by the window in the clearing, afternoon light of Charlotte Douglas International Airport, and he let that be what it was, which was a door he had kept closed for a very long time, finally opening, and the air on the other side of it was not cold, the way he had expected, but warm, the way certain things are warm when you finally let yourself have them. I know, he said. I should have called sooner. You're calling now, Rosa said. That's what matters. Outside the window, the ground crew moved across the wet tarmac, and the plane reached its gate, and the jet bridge extended, and the door opened, and people began to arrive, moving up toward the terminal, with the relieved momentum of people who have reached the place they were going. Cole watched them come. He was in no hurry. He had nowhere else to be, and the afternoon was long, and for the first time in a long time, the weight in his chest pocket felt like something he was carrying towards something rather than away from it. He stayed on the phone. He talked. And the airport moved and breathed around him, and the storm kept pulling back, and the light through the windows kept growing slow and steady, and certain the way light always returns after weather, the way it always does.